Technology Conference, IETC 2021. My name is Tim McIlvaine, and I am the Executive Director of the Learning Technology Center, and I have the pleasure of welcoming you all to the conference. Yeah, give it up. Thank you all for coming out. We have two versions of the conference going on, actually. So one is the in-person conference, and that would be all of you and those who are still making it up from the exhibit hall. And we have a virtual component as well. So we are live streaming the keynotes, and the virtual sessions happen in the evenings on Wednesday and Thursday. So we got some more coming up this afternoon. For those attending the in-person session, it is really nice to see all of you in person. It's been a while since some of us have been able to get to conferences. And for some of you, it might be your very first conference as well. We ask that you continue to wear your mask throughout the conference in the public spaces, just out of respect for your colleagues. Raise your hand if this is the first IETC conference you've ever been to. That's a lot of you. Many of you have been here before. We usually have a large repeat attendees. We've been around for quite a while now. This is our 28th year. We have a long history of working with educators and administrators, IT staff in Central Illinois. And we draw a crowd from not just right around here, but from Southern Illinois, Central, Northern Illinois, Chicagoland area, and every year we seem to grow a little bit more. IETC is brought to you by the Learning Technology Center, which is a statewide program that works with school districts across Illinois. We have 30 staff members. Many of them are here supporting the conference. And every year we work with the 852 school districts throughout Illinois. Last year we facilitated about 800 events, worked with 25,000 educators, administrators, IT staff. And we're just really excited to help facilitate this conference today. Really the goal of IETC is twofold. First, it's to put on an engaging conference where we talk about technology integration, best practices, strategies, resources, emerging trends, all of the good things that you come to expect with IETC if you've been coming here for a while. The second goal might be a little less obvious, but it's really to build up that capacity and nurture talent in Illinois, whether it's the presenters, the people coordinating the conference, working with exhibitors and vendors. So I want to first give a shout out to all the people who've helped put on this conference. First, if you're a committee member or a volunteer, stand up, wave, let's give it up for them. There's countless hours that have been put in to planning and putting this on. We have a lot of presenters here as well, whether they're here or they were here yesterday, they're presenting online. If you're a presenter, please stand up. Let's give you a round of applause too. Thank you. And then lastly, we have exhibitors and sponsors. Most of them are downstairs, but if you're an exhibitor up here, stand up. Let's give you a round of applause too. Woo. Okay, yeah, they're mostly downstairs. That's okay. And a big shout out to all of you for coming. This is, as I was saying, for some of you, this is the first in-person conference you've been into in a while, right? And last year we were all virtual, and this year we still have a virtual component. And it's hard to get away from your schools. There's a teacher shortage, a shortage of everything, and we're just thankful that you were able to make the time or convince your administrators to make the time to get out here. So thank you so much for that. And a large event like this is not possible without our sponsors. So we have a good list of sponsors. Many of them are downstairs. So I'm going to shout them out by name. Bradfield, Bytespeed, CWG, DAC Tech, Edleo, Edpuzzle, Houghton Mifflin, Harcourt, Kidden, Zoom, Red Eye Network Solutions, Smart, ViewSonic, Viva City Tech. Definitely talk to these vendors downstairs and all the vendors in the exhibit hall. They're a wealth of information. If you're somebody who doesn't usually talk to exhibitors, we really encourage you to do that. Most of them are here to help you, right? They're here to provide services, give you information, and they really are a wealth of that information. So please stop by and talk. As we kick off this event, if you haven't figured out the Wi-Fi yet, it's IETC 21. Thank you, IDEA, for sponsoring the Wi-Fi. PD information will be sent out via email. There's information in the program book as well. So definitely look at that. So let's talk about our schedule for today. Please download the Sketch app to find out all the sessions, where they're at. It is updated as changes occur. So please keep on referencing the app. Immediately after the keynote and throughout today, please visit the exhibit hall. The exhibit hall is also going on tomorrow. But when you go to the exhibit hall, take your yellow ticket, which was stapled to the back of the program book. This will get you a free t-shirt, a free bag. We have a live screen printer who's going to be printing on site. So if you want some swag from IETC, definitely drop by there. There's a dedicated exhibit hall at 11 o'clock, so there's no other sessions going on. Please stop by the exhibit hall, both to talk to vendors, but also to pick up your lunch. We have a boxed lunch. And there's an exhibit hall, dedicated exhibit hall tomorrow, as well at 10. In-person sessions today go until 4 o'clock, and virtual sessions start at 4:30. And please come to IETC Q. This is our Thursday night reception. This will kick off at 5, goes until 6:30. There's free food, free drinks, games. It's a lot of fun. Definitely one of the many, many highlights of IETC. So stop by. That's going to be in the exhibit hall as well. It's a really good time. We have live music as well. We always try to make IETC fun, and that's one of the ways we do it. Another way that we do it is to gamify part of the conference. Many of you have been playing the game already, and so that's been fantastic to see. And I'm going to show a quick video to introduce the game further for those of you who are now interested in the game and didn't know anything about it. This video is on Gameably. It is produced by Adam Geisen, the creator of Gameably and one of our IETC committee members. If you want.
Hello, IETC 2021 attendees. We're so excited you chose to be a part of our event, and we're hoping you'll be participating in our conference-wide IETCopoly gamified experience powered by the Gameably platform. The game works like this. Throughout the conference, your mission will be to find secret codes, either by getting them during a presentation, finding them hidden around the event space, or by visiting and chatting with the vendors in the exhibit hall. You'll enter these codes into the Gameably platform and earn points to move up the leaderboard. You'll also randomly receive one of a number of playing pieces, much like collecting properties in the board game Monopoly. If you find all the matching items in one color, we'll then automatically put your name in a raffle drawing for any of our awesome prizes to be given away at the end of the exhibit hall time on Friday. There are 7 colors, so you have the ability to be entered up to 7 times. You can also use the Gameably platform to complete social media challenges each day to earn more points and more game pieces. At the end of the exhibit hall time on Friday, we'll take the top 20 points earners and add their names to the raffle. That's a total of 8 entries to win our amazing prizes. All you have to do to participate is go to app.gameably.com and create an account. Then once your account is created, click Join World at the top of the screen and enter the code ZXC46U. Then let the games begin. If you have any problems, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at adam@gameably.com. Thanks for participating, and we can't wait to see you at IETC 2021.
The game is a lot of fun. Definitely give it a try. There are some people already on the leaderboard, but I'm sure you can knock them off. There are prizes, as Adam mentioned in the video. We have roughly $3,000 worth of prizes we're giving out, VR headsets, There's a whole lot of them, actually. I'm drawing a blank now on what the prizes are. But they're really good. Some of the vendors also have some prizes, too. So talk to them, see what they're giving away. If they're running their own competitions, look at that, too. And Adam gave you his email address there. He's pretty busy today. So if you have any questions about Gameably, talk to Adam, who's around here someplace if you know him. But also go to the front desk. The front desk is our help desk, our check-in desk. If you need anything throughout the conference, talk to them or somebody in a purple shirt. We got a few purple people in the background, or a red. I'm not sure what color red that would be, but talk to them too. Those are our volunteers. And without further ado, I'm thrilled to introduce Manuel Herrera, who is going to be our keynote. He's an educator, a speaker, an illustrator. He specializes in a whole bunch of things, including sketchnoting, visual thinking, and design. And over the past 19 years, he's keynoted conferences, led workshops, and consulted with districts and organizations across the country. And he's coming to us from St. Louis, where he's the coordinator of learning services at Afton School Districts and an adjunct professor at Webster University. And I'm really, really excited to have him come up here. This is going to be a great way to kick off Thursday. It's going to be a wonderful day. And I just, again, thank you so much for being here. And without further ado, here's Manuel.
Can you hear me? No. Oh, there we go. I'm alive. Awesome. Thank you guys for this. I'm super excited to be here because I get to talk about drawing, which is really, really cool. But I do have to say thank you to IETC for asking me to be here. Thank you to their board members. Thank you to their committee. Thank you to Brian, who I've been kind of interacting with and setting everything up. Thank you to Butch last night. We got all this set up, and this morning to his team. So thank you guys very much for asking me to be here. It's really nice to know that your work is valued and you get to share what you're doing in schools and what you're doing with kids, kind of not just in your district, but kind of across the country. So if you're going to be here tomorrow, I definitely highly recommend coming to see Dwayne Reed. I'm excited to see him. I have not seen him before, but I keep hearing about him, and then finally I saw that he was going to be here tomorrow. So if you're here, definitely stop by. His keynote is at 12:30, so you can sleep in a little bit. Sorry. But I'm excited. I'm excited to see Dwayne. It's nice to hear from other people who are doing different things, different perspectives of their work. I mostly talk about drawing and design, and he has a different, thing that he does. So it's really cool to get to see that. I also want to thank you guys. As Tim had mentioned earlier, it's been a crazy couple of years, right? Like we've just had, everybody has their stories, whether they're good, they're bad. So thank you for being here. Thank you for going out of your classrooms, coming here. And working with us. I miss conferences, I miss community, I miss being outside of my district. Sometimes to get outside of that bubble that we're in is really good for us mentally and physically. So thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Please stop and talk to me, ask me questions. I love to interact with people and get to know what you're doing, maybe even how you might use some of the things that I might talk about today. I wish I could say thank you and buy you all dinner, but I don't get paid like that. So what I could do is I could make these journals for you. So if you're not at a table where there's journals, please move to a table or send someone to go get these journals. I made these journals for you because I'm hoping that you use these throughout the conference. I want you to take away what I'm talking about today, take some things away from what I'm talking about today and apply them and use them. I'm going to try to make it as easy as possible and try to touch on everything everyone does. But please take one and share them. There are a couple different versions. There's no difference in them. I just ran out of stickers to put on that top. So I had to come up with another solution. So you're welcome. This was much easier this time around. The first time I did a keynote, I made 500, like by hand. I do not recommend ever doing that. It was fun, don't get me wrong. Like it was fun because I learned about our print shop. Our print shop had closed down. We hired a print services company. So I work at our admin building, so I went to the basement and I found all the stuff that the print shop uses. Amazing place if you haven't been. Paper folders, paper cutters, staplers that look like sewing machines. It's pretty amazing. So make it like a couple, make 20, don't make 400. So I ordered these, but I got the stickers made for you guys. So you're welcome. Please treat them like a new pair of white tennis shoes and get them dirty today. I expect to see some drawings and some doodles as I see you, because if I run into you, I'm gonna say, where's your journal? What you got going on? All right, and usually when I do talks and I visit a different state, I like to learn about the state a little bit. I'm not originally from St. Louis. I'm originally from Texas, but I don't venture into into Illinois too much. Other than Chicago, I think I've fallen into that St. Louis mentality where they don't cross bridges. It's really weird, even within their own city. So I want you, instead of me trying to do research and look up Illinois, I want you to tell me about Illinois through your drawings. So kind of throughout the conference today, if you'll just kind of think about where you're from or where you work or where you live, and something that's notable, just draw it, sketch it really quick. I don't know, a landmark, a park that means something. You know, I was coming to Springfield. I literally Googled Springfield, and the first picture that comes up is the Capitol building. So think about where you're from. Maybe you have the largest pecan or something that's in your courthouse yard. That's not true because Texas has the largest pecan. But yeah, maybe you have some of that. And I'll kind of crowdsource these together, and I'll fill this up with your ideas and your work and your thinking. The only one I'd ever done was Chicago because I took my kids there. I want to hear from small town. I grew up small town Texas, so I love to hear about the little stuff that only those small towns know about. So let's help spread the word. All right, we'll get started. I'm going to walk around because I don't like standing on stages. Make sure I have everything I need. And we'll start talking about drawing as a thinking process. So to kind of set this up, I want you to kind of know a little bit about me and who I am and what I was like as a child. A couple of years ago, a cousin of mine, who's about 3 or 4 years younger than me, sent me these 2 pictures. These are actually pictures that I had given him when I was in high school. So this was, 25 years later, he gives me these pictures, which is kind of cool to look at stuff you did when you were in high school. I did not save stuff from high school. He apparently did. And so the one on the left kind of sums up my high school experience. I had a great high school experience. It was wonderful, small town, did all the things, mudding, trucking, fires, toilet paper in houses, all that stuff. But school that was not my jam. Like, I just didn't like school. I did well, but I didn't like it. And mostly it was because I drew all the time. And so the picture on the left is actually a book cover, for those of you who remember book covers. I used to turn mine inside out because one side had like all the local companies or whatever who donated money and you have your book cover, but I flipped mine inside out so I could draw on it. And so I would spend time while teachers were talking just drawing, just doodling. So it was really cool to see this. So that's what I did, and I always got in trouble because I wasn't taking traditional notes, I wasn't listening, I wasn't paying attention. But for me, that's paying attention. That works for me. There's probably some of you here right now, either you're doodling, you're writing your grocery list, your to-do list, you're probably checking email, but you're still kind of listening. And I still see it today. There are some teachers that get onto kids about that. And that's not, we're not listening, we're just using that to pay attention and not do something else that might be distracting to the class. Because I did well in school, I just didn't like getting yelled at. The one on the right, this is cool. The one on the right is actually a digital drawing that I printed out and gave to him, and that's why he kind of colored it. This was actually in my computer class. I took a computer class my junior and senior year, learning Windows 95. So this is actually Microsoft Paint. You guys remember that? It still exists. But this was my doodling while learning Windows because we were on computers, we didn't have paper and pencil. So while the teacher's teaching us Windows, I'm doodling, and so I'm making this, but nobody ever asked me about this. I just printed it, gave it to my cousin, and that was kind of the end of it. But had somebody stopped and looked at that and asked me about that photo, they might have heard somewhat of a story. So just because kids are drawing and doodling doesn't mean they're not thinking, they're not telling a story in their head. So we'll kind of go through this story here really quickly. Subway. Small town, we got a Subway, which was kind of cool. Like in your small town, that's like the bomb. Like you got a Subway. So I wanted to work there, all because I wanted the green hat, because the green hat was kind of cool, kind of trendy, nobody had it. Then yes, those are rollerblades on my feet. So in the 90s, this is when the X Games started, and one of the events that they have, and I think they still have, is aggressive inline skating, AKA rollerblading. So I used to do that. I used to think I was a bad kid, man. I was rollerblading. I tried skateboarding as a middle schooler. It's terrible. It didn't work. It hurt. So I did that. I wore baggy clothes because that's what you did. You wore baggy clothes. But it was also a body confidence thing. I ran track and cross country. I was skinny and scrawny. I was like 115 pounds all through high school. Great at track and cross country, but didn't look so hot, so I would wear baggy clothes. Again, these are part of that story. They're illustrations, but they're questions that teachers should be asking, or could ask, not should, just could ask kids. Oh, and I wore a chain wallet too. Favorite car? My uncle next door had a red VW Bug. We used to sit in it all the time and talk about it and say, we're gonna drive this one day. It never worked, but we always sat in there, so it kind of became part of my picture. Microsoft Paint at the top. I also, when I got my license, I could drive to the next town over, which was Victoria, and they had a place called Froth and Java. And it was like this real, 90s hipster cafe. And I thought it was so cool because you could go in there and they had flowers inside on their tables and they played this, interesting music and they would have live bands. So I used to want to open a coffee shop. I still kind of do, but I want to sell tacos. All right, the other thing is, you can't tell on my shirt, but on there that's Atticus Finch was the name of a band that I liked. So I wrote that on there, and I actually went to a concert. You're not gonna be able to see it, but ran into one of my favorite bands now to this day is Blue October. So again, questions that you could ask kids about this. Jinko jeans, anybody rock those in the 90s? Somebody, come on. Okay, maybe not. Maybe it was just me, I was a nerd. Frontside grind, I could do that. I learned to write bricks, create bricks. And then in the middle of the picture was, I had a photo somebody had given me of Kurt Cobain's guitar from Nirvana in a Hard Rock Cafe. But the first thing I noticed was it was upside down because it's actually a left-handed guitar player, and when the picture they showed it, they mounted it in Hard Rock upside down. So anyways, this all tells a story. Just because we're drawing doesn't mean we're not good thinkers or we're not paying attention. So I did a lot of things when I drew. I drew to pay attention. I drew to focus. I drew many, many, many of those S's through high school. As an elementary kid, I still remember drawing pictures to impress girls. So Malin Stafford, if you are on the computer now, remember that Mario brother I drew for you in 5th grade? And then when I got into college, I would still kind of doodle, but those doodles became my notes. And this is kind of like the beginning of what would be called sketchnoting. We didn't have a name for it when I was in college, it's just something I did. So I would start to do that. So that was kind of how I used drawing. I wasn't doing drawing other than to try to impress girls, I wasn't really doing it for the artistic piece. I was kind of just doing it, there was purpose behind it. There was like, I'm paying attention, trying to focus, trying to organize information. And then I became a teacher. So when I first started teaching, I started off in special ed. So I taught middle school special ed. Special place for us middle school teachers, a really special place for us middle school teachers who teach special ed. I loved it, it was great. I miss middle school, I don't teach anymore, I'm no longer in the classroom, but I loved it. And so when you teach special ed, when I taught inclusion is what we called it. You guys might call it class within a class, or you might call it co-teaching. But what I would do is I would follow a group of kids and we'd go to all the core content areas and we would kind of co-teach together. Well, when I started teaching, I had been out of school, at least 8th grade for quite some time. So I kind of had to relearn 8th grade, which was really interesting because special ed teachers, we're the jack of all trades. We have to know all the content. And so as I was kind of relearning some content, those doodles started to come out again because I had to make sense of a lot of content, right? And so I would use simple things like this, which is basically a graphic organizer, but I would just draw them. And then when I'd have to go reteach to my students, I would show them that, and I would reteach it, and I would point, and we'd go through this, and we'd talk about the branches of government, and then we'd talk about checks and balances, and we'd start over new if it gets too complicated. My kids really, really benefited from using this, because when we would go take tests, what I would notice was that they would flip papers over and redraw the notes that we would draw together so they had those as notes. So then the kids, the general ed kids would ask, what are they doing? I'm like, well, so I'd try to go explain. And again, just like in high school, the teacher was like, no, that's not how you take notes. You can't show kids like that. And I'm like, but they're learning. This is how, no, they need to learn how to do it in Roman numerals. And this was every teacher. This was even just in my experience. I'm not speaking for all teachers, but in my experience, this is what happened. So I want you to know that, drawing isn't, because then she would mention, you're just teaching them how to draw. I'm like, no, I'm not teaching them how to draw. I'm teaching them how to think. So at the end of this all today, my time here, my goal is to teach you to stop thinking about drawing as an artistic process and start thinking about it as a thinking process, because that's really what it is. And I want to be able to show you some examples today of what that can look like. I want you to participate a little bit and get to know this. So I think you guys are supposed to know something about that. I'm not really sure. Okay. So let me introduce myself again so you can learn a little more. Don't worry, it'll come back. So this is kind of my introduction, usually that I do with everyone. Who am I? I'm an educator, I'm a speaker. I'm a doodler. At this point in time in life, I've illustrated 3 books, which is kind of a cool thing, considering I didn't even go to school for art. I went to school to be a business major. I wasn't even in education. Originally from Texas, small town Texas. Lived in Austin for several years, moved to St. Louis, but I keep saying I'm just passing through because I think I want to explore a little more, explore other areas. I'm a dad. I've got 2 children. Those poor guys, I use stuff on them all the time, and I'll show you a couple examples in my workshop. And then we recently got a puppy. Everybody got dogs during COVID, right? And so did we. So her name is May. I like to challenge myself. Even though I do draw all the time, I like to challenge what I draw and how I draw and the way I think. And so I'll do little things just to kind of keep my practice going. And so one of the things that I do is I write lunchbox notes to my kids. And I draw on them. And I usually try to stay, theme it out like the time of the year kind of thing. So fall, we went through all the fall things and we've gone through all the Halloween things. But I write them, I just draw them, just things I wouldn't normally draw because it helps to build this visual library in my head. I also like to draw my thinking at work. And so I put that on my wall so I can go back and look at all of these ideas that I have because I never know when I'm going to use one of those ideas later on down the road. Child of the 90s and the 80s, so I love grunge music and 90s hip hop and 80s new wave. Yeah. Small town kid liking 80s new wave? Yeah, I was a nerd. No, I was the only kid who did. Want to hike more? Calendars are hard. I'm terrible. You're lucky that I made it here. I'm just terrible with calendars. That just says one of the goals that I have is I want to put art in an art fair at some point. I run, bike, swim, and golf. I don't do many of those very well, but enough to stay in shape and stay active. I forgot what else, but I love tacos, man. I'm from Texas. Tacos are amazing. And some of my information there. I show this because this might be a way, it's kind of like telling that story. This might be a way for your students to introduce themselves maybe at the beginning of the year or maybe when they're writing a narrative. They don't always have to look so complicated. They can also look like something like this, which is basically just a mind map, right? But kids remember this. You remember there's this research that shows that if you use illustrations or use drawings whenever you're explaining something, your audience will remember much more of it. So this is the same thing I just told you, just a little simpler. All in all, it's way easier to interpret than this. I could have showed you this. I could have read this to you. And we still do this with students. And I'm not saying it's bad, but it's much easier if we can add visuals to that. They're going to remember those a little more. All right. Here's an example. I at a conference that I was at, did this, and it really spoke to Kim Zajac, who is a speech and language therapist in middle school. And she said, I want to use this with my kids. And so we talked a little more after the conference, and this is an example of what her students did in middle school. She's like, these were great because I had some students who were very nonverbal or had a hard time talking in front of people. And they would do these ahead of time. So when they stood in front of people to talk, they held them as kind of their prompt. That's a bad spot. They held them as their prompt, and they were able to kind of read from that, which was much easier than writing out on note cards and keywords. They didn't quite that wasn't working for them. So using something like this would be a great way to have your kids introduce themselves or tell a story. People that use visuals, we just see the world very different. I see everything with some kind of illustration, some kind of animation on it. And again, it's all part of our imagination, it's all part of our creativity. And I think everybody's capable of doing this if you kind of just open up and let yourself go with it. These are my kids. We just took vacation pictures, went to an aquarium in Kansas City, but that looks way cooler, right? So again, I see the world very different. I think all of you do too. I think sometimes we're just embarrassed to admit it. And eventually that led to all this drawing, all this doodling, all this yelling at that when I was a kid or got yelled at, eventually led to me illustrating a book. Just because I didn't write the story, I'm terrible. I'm not a good writer at all. But I can tell a story. I can take someone else's words and I can illustrate it and I can make meaning out of those words. So that's what's great about using pictures and helping kids understand they do have a strength just because they don't know how to write really, really well, or they're not writing narratives super well. They still have other talents that they can use. So after doing all this, in schools, I ran across Sunny Brown. And if you're not familiar with Sunny Brown, she has like the coolest title, I would say. She's a chief info doodler. I want to have that title one day. She's a visual thinking designer and author. The book she wrote is called Doodle Revolution. So as I was teaching, I came across Sunny Brown probably about 8 years ago. And I'm still doing drawing with kids. I'm still using that. I'm still getting yelled at by teachers. Cornell notes came around and it's not Cornell notes and they can't do that and they have to. I'm like, but the kids are learning, it's working. So I came across her and she has a TED Talk. It's about 15 minutes long, but I'm only going to show you about 90 seconds. And there was something that really spoke to me about it.
Additionally, it has a profound effect on creative problem solving and deep information processing. There are 4 ways that learners intake information so that they can make decisions. They are visual, auditory, reading and writing, and kinesthetic. Now, in order for us to really chew on information and do something with it, we have to engage at least 2 of those modalities, or we have to engage one of those modalities coupled with an emotional experience. The incredible contribution of the doodle is that it engages all 4 learning modalities simultaneously with the possibility of an emotional experience. That is a pretty solid contribution for a behavior equated with doing nothing. This is so nerdy, but this made me cry when I discovered this. So they did anthropological research into the unfolding of artistic activity in children, and they found that across space and time, all children exhibit the same evolution in visual logic as they grow. In other words, they have a shared and growing complexity in visual language that happens in a predictable order. And I think that is incredible. I think that means doodling is native to us, and we simply are denying ourselves that instinct. And finally, a lot of people aren't privy to this, but the doodle is a precursor to some of our greatest cultural assets. This is but one. This is Frank Gehry, the architect's precursor to the Guggenheim in Abu Dhabi. So here's my point. Under no circumstances should doodling be eradicated from a classroom or a boardroom or even the war room. On the contrary, doodling should be leveraged in precisely those situations where information density is very high and the need for processing that information is very high. And I will go you one further. Because doodling is so universally accessible and it is not intimidating as an art form, it can be leveraged as a portal through which we move people into higher levels of visual literacy. My friends, the doodle has never been the nemesis of intellectual thought. In reality, it is one of its greatest allies. Thank you.
And her hair is short on here on purpose because her hair is short now, so it's not like I misdrew her. But this is what she said. This spoke to me because I see this a lot. Leveraging doodle when information density is very high and the need for processing is very high. Now, she started doing the research, and that's what piqued my interest. I was like, there's research? People are doing this? This is a thing? Now, here she is on a global stage talking about this. And again, this is her opinion, and she's got research to back it. But finally, like everything that I had been working at and doing was being validated. And it was a great feeling to know that what I was trying to teach kids and what I was doing with kids and what I did for myself was actually beneficial and not just some hobby and not just something to do on the side and very silly. So I started to do my own research and kind of actually look up these things. Before I didn't do it, I just did it. I just did it because it worked. So then I started to research, and research started with blog posts about doodling. And those blog posts included more research. And they led to more blog posts and more journal entries. And then it started to trickle into design, which was something that I was really passionate about in general. And it wasn't just in one content area, because I know we kind of tend to want to think about one content area, maybe ELA, because kids are writing stories or drawing stories, but it applied to a lot of content areas. But a lot of it was original drawings. I know we give kids visuals, but with this, you're actually asking kids to construct those visuals, construct meaning out of what we're saying, maybe guide them, show them. Then I realized not only was there research, not only were there people talking on a global stage, but there are actual companies that do this. So this is a company, Explain, that is out of the Northwest, that gets hired by companies to work with their board members, directors, and management teams to problem solve using visual thinking. This is a place called The Filament. They are also hired by companies to work with their board members and their leadership teams to problem solve with drawing. This is these guys are out of St. Louis. Sunny Brown still has her firm and is still going and gets hired by companies to problem solve because they create those, they visualize all of their problems, all the components of it, and they have strategies to help them work through that. Brand is a publisher out of the Netherlands that publishes books on visual thinking and the strategies that you can use with visual thinking. So I was like, heck yeah, like this is okay, this is something. This isn't just fun, this isn't just pretty. And so in the end, I don't want you to think that I want to teach you how to be a great artist. I don't care that I make you a great artist. I hope that I help you to be a great thinker and to use that with your students. And this is kind of why I exist now in education, because I want to be able to spread that message and work with teachers on this. So I know in the end, if you walked away right now, you would say, well, I can't draw, it doesn't matter, that's not what I do. Oh, but you can. How is it that you can't do something now that you could do when you were little? It's just false. You can draw, and so I'm going to prove it to you now. So this will become the interactive portion of our session. I think you're supposed to use this again. I'm not really sure. All right, so we're going to build some confidence with your drawing today. So this is, like I said, the interactive portion of the event. So if you want to get your journal out and find a nice blank piece of paper, no moans, no groans, please. They gave you colorful pens. Look at those pens. Those look awesome. If you can make it all the way down to the next color, you are a boss. I don't know how long it's going to take. I sat there and scribbled for a little bit, and I was like, yeah, this can take forever. So blank piece of paper. You can use paper, and this is a question I get asked all the time. What do you use? What kind of technology do you use? I would tell you never buy anything. You always have paper, and you always have a pencil. That's all you need. You don't need anything flashy. You don't need an iPad. Don't let anybody tell you you need those things if you're going to do something like this. You need butcher paper that's in your faculty workroom and markers. That's it. You don't need anything else. So, oh man, I put this in there again. All right. So let's start with this. On your paper somewhere, kind of on a spread, I want you to create these scribbles. Not exactly like mine, but just scribbles. And I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to do this up here. Taking a big risk. I'm going to switch between things here. And I'll show you what I mean. Feel like a DJ. All right. Start with a blank piece of paper. So when I say scribble, just want you to just like that. I want you to create like, I don't know, 6 of those, maybe 3 on one side. Oh, what is this? What? Can we not show my, oh, there we go. You guys were just laughing at me. You weren't telling me. All right. So just like these, maybe 3 on one side, 3 on the other. Just 6 doodles, 6 random doodles. Kind of space them out a little bit. I'm going to cheat because I didn't do mine right. Oops. Six random doodles. Should take you about, I don't know, 20, 30 seconds. Now what if I told you that you're going to turn these into birds? Trust me on this, I promise. You're going to turn these into birds. And you're going to do this. I'm just going to change colors for dramatic effect, so you don't have to change colors, but I will. I want you to look at one of your doodles, and I want you, and I'm spinning mine around because I want to get a different perspective on each of these. And I'm going to turn these into birds just by adding a beak, an eye, and some legs. Kind of watch this magic happen. Can we agree that that's a bird? It's not the best bird, but it's a bird, right? So I want you to try this again. So try to turn all 6 of your drawings into a bird. No doodle. If you want to get fancy, you can put in some tail feathers. But I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to do this. So quiet. You guys are thinking. I'm going to come around and silently judge your drawings. Twin birds. What's that? It's a penguin. It's a duck. Kids are always like, it's a chicken. I'm like, what's a chicken? It's a bird. So I don't show you this to be gimmicky and get you to laugh and get you to giggle. I show this to you for a reason. You just drew 6 birds, roughly 6 birds, maybe 7, in probably about 60, maybe 90 seconds. If you'd have walked in here, blank page, don't stand in front of the projector. If I say, I need you to draw me 6 birds, most of you would have thrown your pen back on the table. It's like, I'm not going to do that. I don't know how to draw birds. This is kind of how I want you to think about drawing. It doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be beautiful. You're just trying to express an idea. And guess what? In the end, if you want to write bird in letters underneath, you can do that. The idea is to put a concept on the piece of paper, talk about it, and move on. Not spend so much time like, well, what color is which bird is it? Like, does it have feathers? Does it need is it in a nest? Draw a circle underneath it. It's in a nest. Boom, done. Now we can go ahead and talk about migration. We can go ahead and talk about food chains. We can go ahead and talk about whatever it might be, but we're not spending so much time worried about how good the bird looks. This is a great Thanksgiving Day activity. You're welcome.
Yeah. We just have to sort of make a decision where we want the little stream to come from. Maybe back in here. And I know this is going to look like we're destroying everything. Don't worry about it. We don't make mistakes. We have happy accidents.
Yeah, we have happy accidents. All right. So how did you feel about that? Anybody want to yell? How did you feel about the bird? Good? Good. I'll go with thumbs up. Thank you. I'll go with thumbs up. This is my coffee. All right. So we're going to keep doing this. And so the more I looked into researching about drawing as a thinking process and how do I use this, the more I came across other activities and other ways of thinking about drawing. And over again, I would come across this, whether it was Sonny Brown's book, whether it was Dan Rome's book, whether it was Mike Rohde's book. These are all people who are kind of big names in visual thinking. They all talked about this. So I don't know who originated this. But they all said these are the basic elements of drawing. If you can draw these shapes, and I encourage you to draw these shapes now, just to make sure, just test yourself. Can I draw these? I think you can. I think you can draw a dot. I think you can draw a line, a rectangle, a circle. For you math teachers, I know that's a line segment and not a line. I did get talked to after a conference, because I used to put dots at the beginning of each of them. And just to kind of show a starting point, I had a math teacher. That's a line segment. But you can all draw these. And once you draw these, think of these as letters. Think of this as the alphabet. The alphabet is made up, the words are made up of letters. Letters, put them together, string them together, you can make words. So kind of think of drawing like this. Think of an object, break it apart in your head, say, okay, I can draw each individual piece of that, and if I can smash them together, I can get a drawing. It takes time. Eventually, you will come up with your own visual library of images, because you will draw them over and over and over and over. I draw these images all the time with kids. And so they're in my mind, quick. It's kind of like spelling. You spell a word enough, you're going to know how to spell it. So drawing is the same kind of thing. How do I do this? Ooh, laser pointer. All right. Anybody want to take a guess as to what this is? It's a squirrel. It's a squirrel and a tree. That is how I learned in high school prepositions. You probably do something very similar. Anywhere that squirrel can be in relation to that tree is a preposition. It can be inside, outside, under, below, above, around. 25 years later, I still remember it, all because my teacher used a drawing. That was her drawing. I literally, every time, squirrel was like this big blob with a dot, and a tree was the only thing that looked like anything, was a tree. My animals always look the same. Again, I've illustrated books, I've illustrated graphics, but my animals, when I work with kids, always look the same. I just change their heads out. That is it. Or their tails, and that's it. Because I'm not worried about how good my cow looks. I'm not worried how good my dog looks. We may just be talking about an animal. We might be talking about migration. But I just change out the body. This is old. This is an old slide. But anyone take a guess as to the lower right-hand side is? I got a little crazy with this laser pointer here. It's old. What's that? Support. It was the Supreme Court. That's how I drew the Supreme Court when I would talk about kids, when we would talk about the judicial branch. It was just these dun, 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 and then heads, and then that was it. I just got in details. But again, simple drawings, drew it really quickly. I stole this from from a group of high school kids. Anyone want to guess what that is? Oh, no, the one next to it, sorry. It's actually, yes, it's text message, yes, it's speech bubbles. It's an agreement. People were agreeing on something where it overlapped like a Venn diagram. I thought that was pretty clever. So when you draw with people and kids, steal from them. Look at what they're doing, because you're going to learn a quicker and easier way to draw something next time. Agreement was one of the words we were working on. And we do little activities with kids sometimes to introduce vocabulary. We might come up with some of these icons because we might use it over and over again. But kids were drawing agreement, and we literally had 3 kids. 2 were the models shaking hands, and 1 was trying to capture hands shaking as an agreement. The other kid was like, that's an agreement, done. Like and then another one drew stick figures, 2 arms outstretched, and like a ball showing their hands were together. Don't overthink it. All right, so this is another interactive portion of today. So you need to find a partner, or somebody right next to you. He left. Be my partner. Okay. So you're gonna find a partner, and you're gonna get your sketchbook. So everybody has a partner, and you can have 3 people. It doesn't matter. So we're gonna test. We're gonna test this a little bit. So I want you to find a partner, grab your sketchbook, and I want you each individually to think about a favorite memory you had when Manuel spoke to me today. No, yeah, so think about a favorite memory. Could be anything in your life, quick favorite memory, vacation, whatever it might be. And I'm gonna give you 90 seconds in your own notebook to draw that using, the birds idea or the simple figures or whatever. I'll give you about 90 seconds to draw that. You ready? Go. I don't even know how long 90 seconds is. And you can use words too, sorry. You can use words. You don't have to just be pictures. It can be pictures and words. Okay, so you should be finishing up your drawing. Now what I want you to do is I want you to swap books. Finish up, you can take it, you can break the rules, it's okay. It's okay. Swap books, and I want you to try to guess what event that person was writing about. What was it? Swimming in Tampa, Florida. How did you get Tampa? Oh, it said Tampa at the top. I'm just taking pictures of your hands. Go, keep going, keep going. Go, keep going, put your hands. I just want to draw. I want to see you guys drawing. When you met your husband. Did you guys draw? Yes. You got a cat for Christmas? Was it in a box? Oh, okay, good. You gotta draw the holes. You gotta draw the holes. Like.
Skill set I never developed. Just meet one person and it's like, okay. Yeah, that's my big point of view. There you go.
All right, child of the 90s, I told you. Many nights, high school nights on Saturday, watching Saturday Night Live, because nobody wanted to listen to New Wave with me. All right, so what did you think about that? Yeah, okay, I'll take good up here. All right, sweet.
It was great.
Thank you, I got a great.
You could tell what they were thinking even though, well, they had one word, but you could tell what they were thinking about even without words.
If you guys couldn't hear, you could tell what they were thinking and what their ideas were even without words. Even though he had Tampa, but it's still like, I knew you were at the beach, I knew that what was going on. It's great, it's just, this might be ways you can introduce concepts to kids or just ask about, we constantly ask, well, what did you do this summer? Or what did you do for vacation? Or what did you do for whatever? And this might be a way to do that. I'm gonna go back a little bit. You could also create instructions for kids. How many times do we have kids like, what are we supposed to do? Every time. I'm not saying this is the magic bullet or anything by any means. Am I saying that? Oh, we forgot to do after we guessed. We forgot to high five. High five your partner. Sweet. And then you just build some confidence. Yeah, I've had to draw that muscle several times in order to finally get it. Just so I can draw it kind of quickly now.
It's BBC One and it's 5 o'clock.
As much as I want to watch that again. Okay, so following that up, so now we're kind of hopefully building some confidence with drawing, using simple shapes, simple figures. When do I use it? Where can I use it? And in some of the other research I did, Dan Rome is an author that I follow and listen to his podcast and his website, or go to his website. He had mentioned that there are 6 pictures you can use, or 6 reasons that you might want to have for visual explanation. When you're talking about who or what, you would create portraits. So a lot of you there was some characters or people in your story, so you drew portraits, you drew stick figures, totally fine. Again, I spent some time to draw a face, but you can draw just the stick figure, maybe different hair, maybe different clothing. If you come to my workshop, I'll show you how I draw people. A chart for how much, if you're talking about quantities. I mean, we kind of know that maybe like using Excel spreadsheets and math, but you can also create drawings, just rough estimates of what those numbers might represent using simple drawings. Where, creating a map. And I'm going to show you an example of how you can use a map with kids. Timelines, kind of rethinking timelines. I did this workshop with a group of high school teachers, and she was talking about events, and kids had a hard time, even with the timeline that she gave them, remembering events and the order and the cause and effects of them. So she would use icons, and the kids would come up with icons to represent the events. They could remember the icons and the order of them, and then knowing what they meant, then they were able to remember some of the events. Flowcharts for how does something get done? And flowchart does not have to exactly follow the flowchart formula with the shapes, but you kind of create it yourself. And then equations as to why something might be happening. So now I'm going to show you some examples of this, of what it can look like in schools. And I've kind of broken it up into 4 categories and how I see drawing being used. And I've definitely mentioned some of these before. But there's note-taking, which is probably what a lot of people think of when they think of drawing. They think of sketchnoting. That usually comes to mind. Focusing, just kind of the random doodles, the S's, the scribbling. I used to fill in my entire paper and try to wear out the pen. Design, and problem solving. So sketchnotes, if you're not familiar with sketchnoting is when I kind of consume information in some way, where I'm having information pushed at me, and I'm processing that and I'm capturing that using words and pictures and imagery to capture those ideas. Information, again, is being pushed at me, I'm processing it, and then I'm capturing it in some way using imagery. There are a lot of formulas that you can follow using sketchnotes. There's a lot of structures that you can use using sketchnotes. I'm not going to go into that today, but if you were to Google sketchnote, it kind of piques your interest, you're going to come across this. And I don't want you to be intimidated. I don't want you to be scared, because a lot of what you see online is what, as an artist, is what I consider art. It's very well done. It's usually done for the purposes of sharing online and getting likes. I am guilty. I do this as well. I've got projects where I've had to go and create sketch notes for people, which is awesome. I got paid to draw. So this is art. I don't want you to be intimidated by that. All sketch notes do not need to look like this. We spend time on it. We spend effort because usually somebody is probably paying us, or we want to post it online and get likes. Again, totally fine, not bad, but I don't want that to scare you. This is what sketchnoting could look like in a classroom. So this is a 5th grade classroom reading Home of the Brave. And so I came in to work with the kids to talk about sketchnoting. We did some of the same activities that you guys did. And it's fun to do this with 5th grade and do this with you, and I get the same reactions. Like, there's just this excitement and this joy in doing this. So thank you for being part of this and doing this. But I did the kind of the mind map of the main character, Keck. And I talked about it, and I had them yell out, what do you know about Keck? They had read part of the book. And I drew some of what what they were telling me, and gave me an idea of who Keck was, because I didn't read the book, and I was telling them exactly that. I didn't read the book, you need to help me understand who that is. And then I took that picture, went to, we have a poster printer, made the picture kind of small, printed it on a poster, and then printed 5 of these and gave it to the classroom and said, here, these are yours, I want you to finish doing these. And it's really hard to see, I know, but it's all pencil drawings and pen drawings, and they hung them up in the classroom. So as the kids read the book and as they reviewed, the kids would go up there and draw a note to add to that. And there was 5 of them, so they had, it was plenty for everybody to do. Again, very low tech. I mean, I printed on a poster printer, but I could have started on a piece of butcher paper. Anybody want to take a guess what that is? It's The Great Gatsby. So, funny story. I told you I did really well in high school, even though I didn't do the things they wanted me to do. I was in an honors English class until my junior year. I got kicked out of honors English because I refused to read The Great Gatsby. I don't know why, whatever reason. But got kicked out of honors English, didn't read it, failed that 6 weeks. And here I am, 30 years, 25 years later, talking about The Great Gatsby and showing how notes might have worked. This is the beginning of Great Gatsby. This is an AP Lit class. And what's cool about this is this was student driven. The kids were reading The Great Gatsby, they were talking about it, they were having discussions, and 2 or 3 students told Mr. Kozak, who's at our high school, do you care if we write or draw what we're talking about? Because we're just really having a hard time keeping up with this. He's like, yeah, sure, that's totally fine. So this dry erase board that had nothing on it, I think it had, standards or whatever we put on there. And they erased it and they started drawing. And in the end, it looked like that. Now, I will say, that is a hot mess. That is a lot going on, right? Like, there's a ton of information. But if you were there in the beginning when it started with just the main characters, and it grew, and you were part of that process, you're going to remember that. Those things are going to stick with you. There's research that shows that with recall. So the other side of the board was more of it, but this seemed to be the prettier side of the drawing, I guess. He said also these tally marks, the kids were tallying, they started to notice patterns. They started to notice that the author was using words over and over again. And so they started tallying the words. He was like, it was really weird, like they would use certain words over and over again. So it kind of goes off into the next page. But this is awesome. They even threw in some memes to represent things. They drew the settings. They drew all the connections to the different characters of the story. He said once they erased that, and they were still talking about The Great Gatsby, kids would still point at the board and say, okay, well, this is what was going on, this is what was happening, he went here, she did this, and there was no drawing there anymore. But they had this mental picture in their mind. Again, not pretty, not the best thing, probably nobody's going to tweet that. Another English class at high school, she broke up a book, The Book Thief. She broke it up into chapters and had each kid sketch their chapter, so kind of a good book study type thing. And so kids represented each chapter with a drawing. And then they had to retell that story as a class. So design. So this is the other side of drawing. This is probably my favorite part. And the reason I like it is A, I like a design. But B is these are student ideas. These are no longer your ideas and an author's ideas. These are student ideas that are in their heads. And we're trying to pull those ideas out. We're no longer pushing information, but we're pulling information. So here's a student who came to my classroom. I used to be housed at my high school, at the high school in the district I'm in, and we had this dry erase wall. This is $12 shower board held up on the wall with industrial strength Velcro. Nothing, again, low budget, nothing fancy. But we had this wall in there, and this group of students came to me, and they needed to use all my technology. Because my room had all the stuff. I had the laser cutter, the laser printer, the poster printer, the GoPros, everything. So kids came in, and they had a project. Anybody want to take a guess as to what project she had? This group had, this is a group. What they were doing, and I didn't expect anyone really to answer, they were creating a video. So they came to me and they said, Herrera, we need to use your GoPro, your tripods, and your video software. I said, okay, well, what are you going to create? They said, well, we got to make a video for social studies. So, okay, what's the video about? I'm like, well, we have to make it for a presidential candidate, for a presidential candidate, and against a presidential candidate. I said, okay, well, what are you going to shoot? We don't know. I said, but you need all this technology. Yeah, because it has to be a video. It's like, well, if you don't know what you're going to shoot, why do I need to give you all this stuff? And so we kind of go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And so I said, okay, let's sit down at this wall and let's talk about your candidates. What do you know about your candidates? So they open their Chromebook, so there's two or three more kids behind her, and they're kind of rattling things off. And I show her basically how to mind map. Again, something we teach kids probably at a young age, but at some point we stop and we just assume they're supposed to know when to use that. And so we mind mapped out her presidential candidates. And then we erased. I said, do you kind of understand what I'm doing? Do you see how this is working? And she said, yeah. The group is like, yeah, okay, we can see like all the things that we know about our candidates. So I erased it and I said, okay, you're going to come back tomorrow and you're going to do it. Like, because that was my work. You're going to come and do it. So they came back and they did it. I didn't think they would, but they came back and they did this. They did it for 2 days. And then they eventually used the sticky notes to storyboard out their video. It came down to the wire and they almost didn't get their video done. For me, I was ready to defend them and say, look, they did this work for 2 days, 2.5 days, because they were there that first one. And you wanted them to learn about a presidential candidate, the pros and cons, whatever. You weren't trying to teach them how to make videos, but you would have docked them the entire project had they not made a video. And he's like, so I went and talked and I showed to him. They made it in time and they were fine, but I showed it to him. He's like, yeah, you're right. And so why are we teaching kids how to make video or asking kids to make videos if we're not going to teach kids how to make videos? I know that kids can use technology. We all know they know how to make all the insert whatever social media, but they don't know how to tell stories very well. I mean, I've seen my own son's stuff. Oof. He's in middle school. So I thought this was more important for them to learn how to do. And this is true, and this happened the following year. I went to the same student in another class. I saw her doing this. And I just happened to walk into the class like, what are you doing? She was like, oh, remember that stuff you showed me how to like mind map? She's like, I'm using it with my team this year. I was like, oh my God, I love you. And didn't hug her, it was weird. But yeah, I was like, okay, so she's generalized this and she's passed this on to another content area. And I promise you I didn't set this up, like just for her to have done that. So these are the things. The tools are gonna change for kids. The tools are constantly gonna change. Think about like we were super amped about Prezi. Whatever happened to that? Like, it would have been more important for us to teach kids how to write stories, how to create or process their ideas and map them out than it is for actually use technology, some of the technology. Claudio Zavala, former educator, is now a YouTuber and creative consultant. I was kind of having this conversation with him and telling him that story. He's like, yeah, man. He's like, I do this for a living. And he's like, I still storyboard. And so he sent me a picture of kind of the storyboard of note cards. I was like, why are we doing this with kids? Why aren't we showing kids how to do this? We're just like, go be creative, go make something, and then we get mad when it comes back from Thursday and it didn't, doesn't make any sense or it's terrible. We should be teaching kids this. Anybody want to take a guess as what this is? App development. We had students who were trying to design an app. We have a group of students who work in a hospital and they're completely immersed in the hospital, and then one of their big projects is to find an innovation in the medical industry. And so there's a lot of students who always want to develop apps. And in the past, we're like, oh, here's a great website on how to design an app. Here's a great tool to learn how to code. Here's a blah, 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 whatever it might be. There's a user experience side to apps, and that is a career in an industry that exists. And that is to make sure that app works and a user understands it. Nobody has to explain it. It doesn't have to come with instructions. That's why your apps on your phone look the way they do and they operate the way they do, is because somebody does that. So we talked to kids about that because that was very low tech. We didn't have to worry about teaching the kid to code, but we taught him this, and this is kind of a rudimentary version of what's called wireframing. And wireframing is kind of storyboarding out an entire app. When they're done with this, they would cut it up, or we'd use Post-it notes, or we'd use note cards, and they'd stack them, and then they'd go give it to somebody, and they'd say, okay, this is my app, I need you to use it. And say, okay, well, I'm gonna go here. So they shuffle the cards, okay, here you go, that's the next screen. Well, I wanna go here, all right, and here's the next screen. Well, I wanna go and go back home. I'm like, oh, I didn't put a home button on that page. Or I wanna change my profile. Oh, I didn't put a profile button. So things like that, quick solutions or quick problem solving with very low tech, and you're still using drawing. So eventually, if somebody wants to create this app or design this app, they can do that, but then the app's already kind of done and developed, and kind of some of the rough edges have been worked out. I showed it to a couple of software developers. I'm like, I'm doing this with kids. Is this right? Is this working? And they're like, no, this is what we do. We do stuff like this. He's like, we kind of use a different structure, but it's the exact same thing. So, in design. Problem solving. So what can that look like with drawing? How do we problem solve with kids? So here's an example. Again, if you come to my workshop, we'll do this as a brainstorming activity, but using drawings to solve problems. This one was I believe a grocery cart, some kind of grocery cart they were trying to design, kind of going through different iterations and versions. This is a group of teachers we worked with who were working on curriculum and the curriculum design process, using drawing to come up with ideas. This was our COVID plan in my school district. Notice we had a lot of plans. Doesn't make any sense to you guys, but to us it made perfect sense. We understood exactly what our boss wanted to do, what he was thinking, what was our contribution, because we were trying to look at different platforms, because we were like in the middle of it trying to adopt something, and what was that going to look like, and if it happened, what was plan A, what was that rollout going to look like, what was plan B, et cetera. I think we all went, we may have even gone to like plan E, D, and further down. But yeah, we use this simple drawings on a whiteboard so that we could understand what it is we were trying to do. We'll even assign tasks to each other. We'll write our names next to things just so we know, and it sits in the hallway, or not in the hallway, but like outside of our offices. But using drawing to show problem solving. That's still drawing. I know it's words, but it's still drawing. This is this presentation probably about 5 years ago. So when I first started doing this presentation about 5 years ago, myself and a friend of mine, both of us passionate about doing this, signed up at ISTE, which is the largest ed tech conference, international ed tech conference. And we got picked. We're there in San Antonio, and we're sitting at the hotel, and we're like, all right, we present in about an hour and a half. We don't have anything. So, because we kept saying, we'll get it done. About an hour and a half, roughly an hour and a half before, we were like, okay, so we sat at the table, like outside in the lobby, said, okay, let's plan this. And so she's very verbal. She's like, okay, we're gonna do this, and you're gonna have this slide, and you're gonna say this, and we're gonna put that, and we're like, stop, like, I don't know what you're talking about. And we just got a piece of paper out and kind of just scribbled this out, scribbled a rough draft of the presentation, went our separate tables, and worked. But we both knew exactly what that presentation was supposed to look like. We knew exactly what we were supposed to do, and what we were gonna say, and what our contributions would be, all because we created this kind of map. I now teach kids how to plan presentations roughly like this, but I do that ahead of time. Anytime we assign presentations to students, the first thing they do is they open their laptop and they open up slides or they open up Keynote and they start messing with the fonts, they start messing with the templates, they go to a slide carnival and they get something really pretty, but again, no story. They don't know how to tell a story. Quick story, when my son was in first grade, came home, I said, Dad, they're in Apple School District. Dad, I made a keynote. I was like, you made a keynote? He's like, yeah. And I said, oh, like a presentation? He said, yeah. I said, you made a presentation? I said, what was it about? He's like, it was an about me presentation. And he kind of talked about it, and he was excited about it. And he showed it to me, eventually showed it to me, and it was just that, really pretty, flashy. And the kids, I get it. The kids love that stuff, and they love all the drop downs. I would have been more impressed if you'd have taught my son how to tell a story from start to finish. It was an about me slideshow. From start to finish, and kind of fill in all the pieces, and then throw that in, maybe next year, maybe later on in the year, then throw that into the software. Because otherwise, what becomes important to them are the fonts, and the typefaces, and the colors, and the templates, and not the story that they're trying to tell. Soapbox done, sorry. All right. Worked with the high school kids, showed them this, started planning with them, and I had a high school senior tell me, I didn't know that I could plan a presentation kind of scattered like that. He's like, that's how I think. He's like, I got ideas all over the place. I always thought I had to go slide 1, slide 2. He's like, I would sometimes skip ahead and put it put it there, but it was so much easier when we would use note cards and sticky notes and some drawing. He's like, I didn't know I could do that. He's like, this helps so much because sometimes I have so many ideas. And we talked about stacking ideas. So you draw out a bunch of ideas. These 5 cards can now become 1 slide instead of 5 slides. And we kind of have that conversation. So kids have ideas. They're not always the best ideas, but they have them, and they deserve our attention in order for us to help polish those out and make those look really, really good. And we can do that with drawing and with visualization, with visual thinking. We can do that. Oftentimes we just throw technology at it and we hope for the best, and we really don't get anything that we're really looking for. We just get something that's kind of cute, but do we really teach kids anything? So the student so it's all about the process. Forgot about that slide. It's all about the process, the ugly. I love that stuff. I encourage you to share that stuff, because when I've seen, through Twitter, through Instagram, what I see is people do share the final product and the beautiful product. And I'm not against that. I'm not against that at all. I just think we should also give, the same lip service to, the ugly side, what I would say the ugly side, kind of the ugly, the worst. Because with the pretty stuff, usually the first question underneath that post is, how did you do it? What did you do? Tell me how that works. What were your steps? But they're like, no, look how pretty it looks. No, like, well, help us. We're educators. Like, we're trying to learn from each other. So, the same student, and kind of teaching him a process, was excited that I taught him finally what being creative meant. He was a student also that said, my teachers always tell me, just go be creative. And he's like, I don't know what that means. I have no idea what that means. Thank you for helping me think through that. Creative doesn't mean it has to look pretty. It doesn't mean it has to look, wonderful. It just means that I have to think through a problem. I come up with a bunch of versions. I know that this is not going to be for every student. I'm not naive enough to think that. I know that this may only touch 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of your kids, but man, we have all these tools that we use. I'm just asking that you add this to that kind of that toolbox and see if you can pick up a couple more kids this year or next year, and maybe bring somebody else along. Thank you guys very much. That is the end. If you want to, I'm going to do a little more of this in my workshop. I've got 2 more workshops, both right after this. And we'll do a little more drawing. I'll show you a few more examples. I'll probably have a lot of Q&A with that. But thank you guys very much. Oh, wait a minute.